All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes, where I take questions from real leaders from around the world dealing with real everyday situations in the workplace. We'll take the theory, we'll take the principles of great leadership, and we'll find ways to apply those in your everyday life. So if you're tuning in to this through my podcast, through YouTube, or you're tuning in live here, drop your questions down into the comment section. Even if I can't handle them in this live session, I will get them on the next episode of Mentor Minutes, and that will round out the discussion. And it gives me something to talk about here while we have some people jumping on to this live session. So the first one's a good one, and it's what should I do as a supervisor if someone in the team refuses to perform the task I assigned to him? He said it's not part of his job duty, but the task I assigned him is something that the department needs to get taken care of. Now, those that tune in all the time hear me talk very softly. I'm very much into servant leadership with a certain level of balance. And I believe in taking charge of things and controlling things wherever you see possible. And that often means that you as the leader are doing the extra work. That being said, I do not suffer insubordination particularly well. And I always recommend that people come down fairly firm on it. So in this case, where an employee says, this is not part of my job description, explain to them why it is important that the department needs to take care of this and why you're looking to assign it to them. And be firm on it. Are there any questions on it? Well, that's still not part of my duty. You need to find somebody else. I'm not finding somebody else. You need to do this. And you need to be firm on that. All right? Now, the job description likely has other duties as prescribed by such and such to get taken care of. But put them on point, and put them on point on it publicly. I have no problem with this. Why don't you feel that this is part of your job description? Why do you feel that somebody else should take care of this instead of you? Why do you feel that this isn't a valuable use of your time? What else were you going to do? I can have people do that. So really, when you run into a case where somebody says this is not part of my job description, I don't have as much of a visceral reaction to that as you might expect. That should be a hot button issue sort of thing. But I want to uncover what the reasoning is behind that. And that's what I recommend, diving a little bit deeper. Why is it that they don't think it's part of their job description? Why aren't they willing to help? Is it simply a matter of they don't feel comfortable and they're afraid that they're going to fail? That can be part of it. For sure, that can be part of it. And so you want to uncover some of those things, but stand firm. If you ask somebody to do something and they say, no, it's not part of my job description, then that's something where you need to stand firm. That's not something you can be flexible on, because that's something that's going to perpetuate itself if you don't jump on top of it right away. Emmanuel, Abhishek, so good to see you here. Abhishek tuning in from India, all the way on the other side of the world. Emmanuel has the next question for us on the live session here, and it's, what is the best way to motivate a group of leaders to meet their goals? Probably the best way to do that is, and I'm thinking about this from a leadership perspective as opposed to another perspective, and that is, what I want you to do is I want you to start opening up a discussion and talking around the goals, Emmanuel. So yes, you want to track it. Yes, you want to give them updates. These are the things that you do with line level employees, those that you want to have match the goals. You want to reinforce why the particular goal is important, but in leadership, they should understand a lot of these things. They should be able to track some of these things, because hopefully they're doing the same thing with their teams in regards to all of the things that they need to motivate them about. And so I'm hoping that a lot of this is almost duplicative. What you want to do, I think, to motivate them just a little bit more is on a weekly basis, bring them together and start talking through successes and start talking through failures. Okay? What is working for one leader as opposed to another as far as meeting those goals is concerned? What isn't working? And then I want you to open it up for discussion and for people to ask for help in a particular area. Hey, this I have coming up. I'm concerned about it. It's important. Who can help in this? So I want you to open that discussion up in regards to who can help. And this will start when you're leading a bunch of leaders. This usually starts with you. Either you offering to help or you guiding who is helping whom. Okay? But create a dialogue around what people are doing in relation to the goals. That keeps the topic front of mind. It gives you a reason to discuss where everybody stands as far as the goal is concerned. and is something that creates a little bit more teamwork as well. And teamwork in and of itself can be motivating. So I would open up the discussion, if you're talking leaders, open up the discussion on how they're going to reach those goals and see if they can share some of their ideas across the team. Great question to start us out, Emmanuel. I appreciate it. And for those that have jumped on, if you have questions, drop them down into the comment section. I do have a few to get to offline. That I received offline either through direct message or email, cm@cameronmorsey.com. That's always a great way to ask these questions if you miss these live sessions. Next question is, my best friend works for me, and I'd like some advice on separating the friendship from work. And these are one of those situations where I really recommend, if you are in a leadership position, that you don't bring your best friend underneath you. I don't know whether you hired this person or not, but don't look to do that, because it creates a lot of problems, not necessarily between you and them. You can manage that perhaps between the two of you. You can manage it very well. However, there's a perception issue that takes place within the team. And again, you can manage that, but it is just one more difficulty and something that if you can avoid it, I would say avoid it. Now, that being said, so let's say your friendship develops, and I'm a big fan of being friends with your employees, but the big thing is you need to have a line clearly drawn. Here's where we are friends, and we will hang out, let's say, watching a football game on a Sunday, but lo and behold, Monday morning at 10 o'clock, I'm calling you into the office to write you up for what you did last week. You need to both be okay with that. And when you are both not okay with managing the friendship-boss relationship, then you, as the leader, have to decide on one or on the other. And it's not fun. I wish there was an easier way out of it, but you need to draw those clear lines. And it can be. This happens with a lot of leaders where you're all right with having friends on the team, but it turns out that your employees can't really be friends with you. They're expecting preferential treatment. Their feelings get hurt when you write them up and do your bossly duties. In those cases, you can't be friends with them and their boss. You have to choose one or the other. And there are plenty of leaders that choose to leave an organization just so that they can maintain those friendships. That's fine if that's where you're at personally. Most leaders choose to put the leadership position first and those friendships second. Those are things perhaps you can pick up later on after people leave the company, that sort of thing. But it's all about drawing those clear lines and being okay with it. And if both parties aren't okay with it, then that limits the relationship that you can have with those particular people. Great question, appreciate it. Darcy has our next one, and it's, what can I do as a leader, but not as a direct supervisor of others, to bring a splintered team together? That is an absolutely fantastic question. I'm going to stall for a second and have a sip of water. Darcy? So you're not the direct supervisor, okay? But you can work with and make those things easier for the direct supervisor. So you come up with ideas and say, hey, this has worked for my team if you're a peer. I can roll this out with your team. I can give you the template on how we did things. I can lay out the step-by-step if you want those particular benefits. So you can be an influencer of other individuals. You can also look for employees. Who are those employees that are leaders amongst those splintered teams? Who are those people that have a voice? Sometimes they are the gossip mongers, but they are the ones that are at the hub of everybody else's communication. Reach out to them and start exerting some of that influence. Leaders don't have to have a title. The big thing when you talk about splintered teams is talk about team and talk about organizational goals and why they are important. That's the big thing that rallies everybody together. I use the sports team analogy all the time. There's an offense and a defense oftentimes. But the main goal is to score more points than the other opponent. So both aspects of it are vital to the organization. There can be all kinds of interpersonal squabbles that go on, but everybody is aligned behind one mission. Make sure everybody knows about that mission and that the decisions that you're making tie to those overall goals. And Darcy, here's the simple way of kind of working through that, and that is bring it into the discussion. Hey, you know, in my group, we just had a great sales day. It looks like we're going to meet those goals so that we're going to be able to meet the organizational goals of overall sales. So you start talking through those sorts of things and get that as a part of the conversation that's going on. Too many times people don't talk about their goals or talk about the organization's goals because they're afraid of failing and calling attention to it. Call attention to it, and people will start seeing how their behaviors align to that. That's my big recommendation. Darcy, let me know if that resonated with you at all, or if you have any follow-up questions on that, drop them down in the comments, and we'll kind of keep this discussion going in regards to that, because that's a really good question. Emmanuel, I'm glad that worked for you. Next one comes from Pamela, and it's, how can you mentor or motivate a staff person who is currently disgruntled by not receiving a promotion? The person is not receptive. And they usually aren't. And there can be a mourning period. And it can be a week, 2 weeks, a month before they get over the fact that they didn't get the promotion. Their feelings were hurt. And in a lot of cases, there's not a lot of practical that you can give. If you had a death in the family, the last thing that you want to hear is that they moved on to a better place right after you find out about that. Okay, that may be the case. However, you want the acknowledgement of feelings. You have to go through that mourning period. So it can be that this person just has an extended mourning period. That being said, you want to throw out those feelers and start working on them towards more proactive measures. So the big thing is, how do they get the next promotion? All right, actually, I'm going to back up. Before you even get to that, why was the person who was selected? In a lot of cases, good to see you here. In a lot of cases, the people that didn't get the position have no idea about the skill set of the person that did get the position. It could be that that person has 10 years of management experience that nobody knows about because they don't talk about it. So make sure that when you are sending out, when you make selections and you send out those hiring announcements, hey, we're pleased to have Cameron join the team, be sure to give him a pat on the back and welcome him. No, that's too short. Cameron brings 10 years of experience here. Cameron brings a series of experience in project management. You give the reasons basically why you selected this person over another person. So get in touch with those. But then you want to get the person working practically towards getting that next promotion. So they need to be clear on why they didn't get the position. What do they need? Do they need more experience leading people? Do they need more project manager experience? Do they need to achieve better results with their team? That's a regular one as well. Do they need to be better at communication? Do they need to be better at training? What are those things? And then if you're the leader, it's very simple to, not simple, but the next step is semi-obvious, and that is start working with them on those things. Create a project plan for how they are going to get better at communicating, how you're going to give them the experience. Put them in some positions where they may start failing a little bit. That's something that makes them much, much stronger. So work with them on creating a path forward. The way to get people out of so much negativity is to get them focused on action. Then point them towards a goal. Okay, now a goal, the two kind of go together, but even just working on something simple, even putting them on a project where they can get a sense of accomplishment is something that can get somebody out of that particular funk. But get them working on those practical things that'll get them working towards the next promotion. Now, you of course want to, measure that. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get the promotion, but these are the sorts of things and these are the thresholds that we're looking at for you to be able to move into the supervisor, move into the manager, move into the director role when that becomes available again. Hope that was helpful, Pamela. That's a good question. It's one that we have to deal with a lot because not everybody can get the same promotion. All right, my paper of questions slipped off of my lap here. So if you have a question, drop down in the comments. I'll answer it in real time. Otherwise, I've got a bevy of them to get to that I received offline. What are your thoughts on a district manager that has unrealistic sales goals in a town that has a depressed economy and no sales history to show they can support such lofty goals? When you have some unreasonable expectations, obviously unreasonable for whatever reason it is, what I like for people to focus on is track that particular measure. Sales is the one that pops up all the time. Glad that worked for you, Pamela. Let me know if you have any other questions as well. But when you're dealing with those unrealistic expectations, and I'll use sales because that's a very regular one, you do want to track that metric. But what I want you to focus on is I want you to focus on improvement, not necessarily where that goal is. So what I want to know is that we're improving, that the line is moving up, that we had a 5% week over week improvement in sales. We'll forget the fact that we're still 50% below what the crazy goal happens to be. Because what that does is that gets people talking and creating that discussion about how people are selling, how they are doing it well, what tricks and tactics are they using to get increased sales, to improve performance. That's what you want to create. So focus not necessarily on the high-end goal. Sure, you can tell your district manager that's what you're focused on. You can put it in the top right corner of the sales sheet that you put up in the break room or something like that. You can give your little nod to it. But what you talk about and what the team talks about is how sales have performed in comparison to each other, and you're focusing on the improvement. In a lot of these cases, what you'll find is that you start getting very close to what that end sales goal is. But you are focused on the means of getting there, not necessarily the destination. Hey, it's important to have a clear destination as far as goals are concerned. But they also need to be reasonable. And where they aren't reasonable, you focus on the journey and taking the right steps to get to that eventual goal, and take your eyes off of that goal and the steps that are in front of you. And that can be a little bit more helpful. So you change the discussion in this case. The district manager may be talking about overall sales of 5 million per store or something like that, where you're at 2.5 million now and the town's drying up. You focus on getting $50,000 in sales this particular week and working towards $52,000 in sales next week, $54,000 after that, and working on that improvement. And that's a better and healthier dialogue for your team. Still addressing the most important thing that your district manager is worried about, but addressing it in a more human way and one that allows for still more motivation to go on within your organization. Great question. Next question I had was emailed to me, and it's, do you think it's a good idea to reply to your prostrated employee to leave the company if they are not happy in their current role? Thank you. I'm not sure I know what prostrated even means, but I got it through the context clues on that. Eknath, thank you for that. And I've given this advice before in my past life as a leader, where I told somebody, I know you want to move into a manager role. We don't have a manager role available in this particular department. So you can either move on to another department, I'll help you work towards that, or if you want to move outside the organization, those are your opportunities. So no, I don't have an issue. My concern from a leadership role is to get the most out of my team and to help them as human beings. And their goals may not align with what the goals that you have, or with the organization's goals perfectly. You have this with students a lot of the time, where you have them and they're fantastic in their roles, but they're getting their degree and they're going to go in a completely different direction once they graduate. That's fine. They're great in their role right now. They're helping create a great cohesive culture and community in the organization, and that's what's important. So no, if the opportunities aren't lining up or the person is unhappy in their role, I think it's very good from just a human perspective, not even necessarily as a leader perspective, to sit them down and say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. And these are what, as an outside observer, I see as the opportunities. So what can we do to make you happy in your role? Are there things that we can do? Or do you need to look elsewhere? And I will be absolutely supportive of that. And I think that's just being a good person, as opposed to necessarily being a great leader. But no, I don't have a problem with you telling somebody, hey, you might be happier outside the organization. Have the discussion, don't get me wrong, about how you can, you can turn them around and for them to be happier in their current role. But if they need to leave to be happy, then I want them to be happy as much as possible. That's me being more human, and that's what I'd encourage you to do as well. Raymond has the next one for us, and it's, what should you do as a manager when you identify a toxic employee within your team, but in the same time, this employee has good technical skills? It's funny how the most toxic employees are often the ones that are pretty decent at their job. They seem to just be able to, I don't want to say fly under the radar, but not give you any real excuse to fire them. So there's two things that I want you to do, Raymond. A, I want you, when a specific instance comes up, all right, you need a very specific example. Preferably one that has a little bit of a history. So you use the present example, but you tie it to a couple of other things that you've seen. All right? And I want you to bring that example to the person, the toxic employee. I want you to deal with it head on. Too much toxicity is allowed to grow in these organizations because leaders don't step in to stem the tide at all. And so it's almost like a bullying behavior from these toxic employees, where if you stand up to them, you can actually diminish that toxicity right away. But because nobody says anything, they just kind of have free reign to do what they want. So I do want you to deal with it directly, but Raymond, you need to look for a specific instance that happens that happens in the instant present today that you can tie to other examples. Because what happens is when you bring it up, they're going to say, oh, well, that was just a one-off sort of thing. Well, no, I've seen you do this with Cameron. I've seen you do this with Raymond. I've seen you do this with Matthew. I've seen this in other cases as well. So you have a little bit more of a firm ground to stand on. But simply mentioning it, mentioning the behavior they should be undertaking is enough at this particular point. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to actually address it, because in many cases when they recognize that you're going to have the discussion with them, then they dial back that behavior a little bit. The second thing is to inoculate everybody that's around them. All right, you will not have 100% of your employees on board with you. You will have a certain subset of employees that are against you at any particular time. It's just the law of averages. We're not going to get along with everybody that we work with or everybody that we lead. So what you can do is keep doing the correct things in leadership, engaging with the team, asking if you can help them, asking for their ideas and improvements. Make sure that you pay particular attention to those that are around this particular toxic employee. If they all sit in a particular area, if they're in a certain department within the organization, make sure you're making the rounds with the team. You want to be in a position where when this toxic employee says something, that everybody around them goes, huh? What are you talking about? Cameron's always really good about responding to me. The organization's always good about this. So you talk to the team around them, and that inoculates them against this particular toxic environment, whatever it is that this employee is spreading. So deal with it head on. When you have specific examples that you can use, deal with it head on. But also do maybe an extra round. If you manage by walking around and creating some of those conversations and supporting the team that way, maybe make one extra round with this particular team and these individuals that are around this team member. And that will be something that helps to diminish the effect of this toxic employee. Great question. Matthew has a question. That's another great one there. What should you do if the toxic employee hides behind mental illness? Well, first of all, you want to look at ways that the organization can support this particular mental illness, rightly or wrongly, not making any judgment on that. But if you have any sort of, employee action programs or any sort of counseling that you can support them with, absolutely be doing that. Because what you don't want to be in a situation with when this starts happening, and I know it's you can almost get cynical and you say it's an excuse, is you don't want to be wrong. It may be that it's cynical and it's an excuse in many instances, but there's that one instance where it's not, and you don't want to be on the other side of that, okay? So do your part as a good human, as a good leader for the organization, and see if you can support them in their mental health. However, my second point still stands, and that is that you can address the people that are around that particular individual and help inoculate them against that toxic behavior. It does not mean also that you don't continue to recognize it, okay? You can talk through, well, what did your counselor say you should be doing in these particular instances? So you can be supportive of them, but make sure that they know that you are recognizing it and that you want to help them address that particular issue, but also inoculate the people around them. I hope that helps, Matthew. I know that's a tough environment to be in, but a very real environment in today's day and age. Mental health issues are hugely important as far as getting the best out of your employees. I mean, there's the business case on that as well. Nikki has the next question for us, and it's, how do you counsel or talk to someone that always talks over you and has no particular accountability? So if we're talking about counseling, so I'm going to take the tack that this person is lower than you in the hierarchy, I'd actually let them speak. I'd actually let them. And are you done with your point? Okay. I wanted to reiterate this. And so you kind of let the person talk, and then you reiterate. And then you let the person talk, and then you reiterate. The talking over thing is a defensive mechanism for so many people, where they don't want, and you almost get it. It's painful to hear bad news. I don't like to hear bad things about me. I don't like to hear about my failures. And so one way to diminish the pain is when somebody's explaining what you did wrong, to cut them off. It's like cutting the amount of time and pain in half. So let them say their piece and then carry on. And so what that does is, if this is a defensive mechanism, what just happened is now, instead of a 10-minute conversation in regards to something, it's now a 30-minute conversation in regards to something, because they never let you finish a sentence and you had to start back over again. So definitely tackle it that way. The other thing is to come up with some mechanism of speaking in turns. Please wait until I finish my sentence, and then you can go ahead and respond. I would appreciate that, because and what you can tell them, because everybody recognizes this too many times. Everybody is guilty. I'm as guilty of it as anybody, and that is, when somebody says something, you think about what you're going to say, and you stop paying attention to what they're currently saying. And you can explain that. Hey, when you cut me off like that, it shows to me that you're not willing to hear the whole story. You're not listening to me. And people understand that. Don't get me wrong, they'll deny it, but in their heart of hearts, they understand that. So I would recommend patience in that particular case. Nikki, is patience with that, and that will help drive through that accountability, because that's partially a way of avoiding that accountability, is coming up with all these excuses. And what you'll be able to find is you'll be able to look for those common excuses that they tie to. And you probably already know what their top 3 excuses are for not being accountable for particular behavior. Address those. If you need more than one example, wait till you have more than one example. Bring up one, and they'll say, well, that was just a one-off instance that happened. No, I have this, and I have this, and I have this. So it's not a one-off, this is a pattern, and we need to address it. So you can start tackling some of those things. But first and foremost, help them just dial back that talking over you by waiting till they finish, and then just carrying right back on with what you were saying before. Next one comes from Nikhil, and it's, how do you start employees share their knowledge with other team members? As per him, spoon-feeding other employees will not work. Yeah, and sometimes you have to spoon-feed employees. What you want to look to do, if you want them to share their knowledge, is encourage it. So when somebody comes to me with a particular question in leadership, Nikhil, what you want to do is you want to, instead of giving them the answer, you want to point them in the direction of the person that does have that particular answer. So what is, they ask any question and point them towards somebody, so they get used to being able to ask those other people. That can be absolutely huge as far as getting people to share ideas. The other thing is to have brainstorming sessions. As the leader, when you have an issue that pops up and you bring your team together and say, hey, we have this issue. I'm looking for ideas on how to address this particular issue. Ready? Go. Who's got an idea? And so what you're doing is you're modeling the behavior that you want them to exercise. And that can be something that opens up those doors. It isn't just modeling. It's opening them up to even the idea that they could ask other people about ideas and how to, share the knowledge and how to do things better. So first, direct people to people that have been successful in that particular area when you receive questions. The other thing is look for opportunities where you can take a question or a situation that you're dealing with and where you can bring people in and ask them for their ideas first and foremost. If they come up with a good one, or they come up with the idea that you would have come up with yourself, then go with it. And when people start seeing that you take action on their feedback and on their ideas, they'll be more open for that in their own environments as well. I hope that helps out, and I love the fact you asked the question. That's great. Patty, so good to see you here as always. Anybody who has any questions, I'm caught up online here, so if you have any questions live, go ahead, drop down into the comments section, ask away. And if you're tuning into this late, you can always drop down into the comments section, email me at cm@cameronmorsey.com. I always go back and take a look at the prior day's comment section and answer those questions first right off the bat. Next one comes in, and it's, do you think it's, any suggestions on properly evaluating employees, moreover other leaders, under my supervision? So, employee evaluations, a great general question. So, employee evaluation should be all geared towards particular goals. So what are the goals of the department? Is it fantastic customer service? Is it great sales? Is it cost effectiveness? Usually, it's all three. But so what you do is then you take those goals and you break them down. Well, what makes up great customer service? What makes up great sales? What goes into that? How do we keep our costs down? And so you answer those questions by diving those layers deeper. And what you have is you have particular behaviors that you create that lead to those goals, and that's what you evaluate those people on. Now, when we talk about evaluating leaders, it's the same thing. What is the goal of the department? They may not be answering the phones, but do they schedule enough people who can answer the phones on a regular basis? Do they support the people that are on the phones with the correct questions? So you're doing the same thing. What are the behaviors that lead to the goals that the department and the organization is striving towards? And that's what you create your evaluations on. Where evaluations go awry is when they become disconnected from those goals and you start encouraging behaviors that aren't in accordance or in alignment with your goals, which sends you off track. And it also diminishes and waters down your feedback because the employee recognizes that those things are kind of arbitrary. So make sure you're clear on the goals and then start breaking it down into the behaviors that lead to the successful fulfillment of those particular goals. So, great questions today. I'm going to give you about 10 or 15 more seconds here for anybody who's online to jump down and ask any questions in the comments section. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you can listen to these anytime. It's a great exercise in just thinking about leadership and thinking about particular situations. The particular situation may not resonate with what you're dealing with right now, but the answer and the principles behind it often do. And you can always take these with you so that when you have those situations pop up, you've got an answer right off bat. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Check in tomorrow and we'll do another Q&A session. I appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.